IB Bio Small Molecules Part 2 focuses on the structure and function of water. The essential idea is water is the medium of life. Here is a diagram of water. There are two bonds between oxygen and the two hydrogens, one here and one here, and the molecule is a polar covalent molecule because oxygen with the higher electronegativity value pulls the electrons towards it. Thus, the electrons are unequally shared, and oxygen takes on a slight negative charge, while the hydrogens take on slight positive charge. The more electronegative oxygen pulls the shared electrons towards it, resulting in the unequal sharing of electrons and slight charge separation. The oxygen end of the molecule takes on a slightly negative charge, while the hydrogen end of the molecule takes on a slightly positive charge. This is known as a dipole. So here is the first IB syllabus statement. Hopefully you can already handle this statement. Explain the dipolarity of a water molecule. Refer to electronegativity. Due to the high electronegativity value of the oxygen, electrons are not shared equally. Electrons are pulled toward the oxygen. The electron density of the molecule is not uniform, and this results in a dipole, which is a separation of charge slightly negative at this end of the molecule and slightly positive at this end. As a result of the slight charge on polar molecules, such as water or ammonia, electrostatic attractions form between molecules. These electrostatic attractions that form between polar molecules are called hydrogen bonds. Keep in mind that hydrogen bonds are not true chemical bonds. These are simply electrostatic attractions or intermolecular forces. Here's the next IB syllabus statement. Draw and label a diagram of two water molecules that have formed a hydrogen bond. Clearly show the structure of one molecule of water to explain dipolarity. Be clear about the hydrogen bond formation between the two molecules. In this diagram, you can see the dipole in each of the two water molecules. In this water molecule, the dipole is slight negative charge on the oxygen end and slight positive charge on the hydrogen end. With this molecule, we have the slight negative charge at this end and the slight positive charge at this end. The positive hydrogen end of this molecule right here is attracted to the slight negative charge of this molecule right here. The attraction between the two water molecules is called a hydrogen bond. In this diagram, there are 5 water molecules. Each molecule is a dipole, so hydrogen bonds are formed between molecules seen here and here and here and here. In this diagram of water in a beaker, we can see the cohesive forces known as H-bonds. Cohesion is the attraction among like molecules. Water is attracted to itself, and from this emerges many qualities that make water a very suitable molecule for living things. Stay tuned. Remember, water is a dipole, the molecule is polar, slight negative at this end and slightly positive at this end. In this diagram, there are 8 water molecules, and you can see the hydrogen bonds in red that provide the cohesion among them. Cohesion is attraction among like molecules. Hydrogen bonds result in properties of water that emerge to make water a very suitable molecule for living things. Water is also adhesive to substances other than water. Adhesion is the attraction of water to molecules other than water. In this diagram, we can see water's attraction to glass. Glass is also polar. Cellulose plant cell wall is also polar. Water is adhesive with plant cell wall. One way of putting water's polarity in perspective is to compare water to non-polar methane. In methane, the electrons are shared equally between the carbon and each of the 4 hydrogen atoms. Neither carbon or hydrogen are strongly electronegative. As well, the tetrahedron symmetry of the molecule supports the equal sharing of electrons, thus no polarity. The lack of attraction among non-polar molecules like methane is responsible for the fact that methane is a gas at room temperature. Whereas water, as a polar molecule with attraction between molecules, water at room temperature is a liquid. And here's the important IB syllabus statement. Describe the properties of water that are significant to living organisms, including cohesion, adhesion, solvent properties, and thermal properties. Refer to the polarity of water molecules and hydrogen bonding. Provide at least one example of a benefit to living organisms of each property of water. Water's polarity makes water a very good solvent. Water's slight charges pull and tug at the charges on other polar molecules or charged particles such as ions. The attraction between water and the ions is greater than the attraction between ions, and this results in the ions dissolving, going into solution. This is a nice diagram that displays the relationship between the water and the solute being dissolved. Water's polar quality dissolves the solute ions as the water surrounds each ion. Notice how the positive end of water is attracted to the negative chlorine ion, and the negative oxygen of water is attracted to the positive sodium. As water dissolves substances, its polarity orients according to the charge of the substance being dissolved. In other words, water forms hydration shells around the particles it dissolves, where the slight negative charge on the oxygen surrounds the positively charged solute, while the slight positive charge of the hydrogen in water surrounds the negatively charged ion. Water in the cytoplasm of the cell dissolves solutes so that reactions can take place. The chemical reactions in a cell take place in a solution. Solutes dissolve first, and then they react. While I don't want to diverge from the large earlier IB syllabus statement that spoke to the properties of water, I'd like to introduce this IB syllabus statement just as a way to bring it in at this point in the movie. Distinguish between substances that are hydrophilic or hydrophobic. Define both terms. Substances attracted to water are hydrophilic. Polar molecules or ions, particles with charge, are hydrophilic. Sodium ions are fully charged, while amino acids, glucose, and ammonia are all polar. All four of these substances are hydrophilic. Substances not attracted to water are hydrophobic. Non-polar molecules are hydrophobic, including fats, carbon dioxide, steroids, or the oxygen molecule. Water is cohesive because of its hydrogen bonds. The properties of water that emerge from its hydrogen bonds are surface tension, columns of water within vessels of trees, high specific heat of water, and the high heat of vaporization of water. In this photograph, we can see a water strider sitting on the surface of water. Hydrogen bonds and the cohesive forces that hold water together allow this insect to remain on the surface, a property known as surface tension. Remember that water is adhesive to other polar molecules. Water is attracted to glass, as can be seen here. Water is also attracted to the cellulose walls of plant cells. The stems of plants have vessels within which water forms long columns. Water is cohesive, attracted to itself, and water is adhesive, attracted to the cellulose walls of the xylem. These forces, the cohesion and the adhesion, support water's movement from the roots to the leaves of trees. Specific heat is defined as the amount of energy required to raise 1 gram of a substance 1 degree C. Water's specific heat is very high relative to other substances. The specific heat of water is high because it requires a lot of energy to overcome the cohesive attraction of hydrogen bonds. Due to water's high specific heat, water does not change temperature easily. A lot of energy is required to change the temperature of water because energy is required to disrupt the hydrogen bonds. Large animals, such as this tortoise, maintain stable temperatures as a result of their large size and being composed of significant amounts of water. Water has a high specific heat because of its hydrogen bonds that maintain temperature stability. Large bodies of water are thermally stable because of water's high specific heat. In large bodies of water, temperature change will be slow, and thus the habitat is quite suitable to living things. Heat of vaporization is defined as the energy required to evaporate 1 gram of a substance. Water's heat of vaporization is quite high relative to other substances because energy is required to overcome the cohesion of hydrogen bonds. Or another way to say it is, water's heat of vaporization is high because hydrogen bonds resist the movement of water from the liquid to the gas phase. Organisms use water as a coolant, taking advantage of water's high heat of vaporization. Body heat drives the evaporation of water from the skin, and when a lot of energy is required to overcome the hydrogen bonds of water, a lot of body heat is removed in the vaporization of water. When 1 gram of water is evaporated from the skin surface by body heat, the body is 540 calories cooler. Body heat is given up as it evaporates water. By evaporating the water in sweat, body heat is removed and the body remains cool, or at least thermally stable. The constancy of the internal environment, such as temperature, would be called homeostasis. Water is a fluid across a wide range of temperatures from 1 degree C to 99 degrees C. This is an important property for water to serve as a suitable habitat for living things. As well, water is transparent, allowing light to pass, light for photosynthesis that provides the food supply for aquatic habitats. So I've come through the properties of water that emerge from the hydrogen bonds. And that brings me to the next IB syllabus statement. Compare the thermal properties of water with those of methane. I touched on this briefly earlier in this movie. Methane is a nonpolar molecule because the shared electrons in each of the 4 bonds are equally shared. The tetrahedral shape also enhances its nonpolar quality. Nonpolar molecules do not form hydrogen bonds. There is little cohesion among molecules. As a result, methane is a gas at room temperature, with thermal qualities that do not make methane a suitable molecule for living things in the way that water is. Here's a table that compares the thermal properties of methane with those of water. Notice that methane has a low specific heat, a low heat of vaporization, and a very low boiling point where the liquid would turn to gas. Methane would not be suitable for evaporative cooling purposes and would not be a liquid at most temperatures on Earth. The fact that water's specific heat and heat of vaporization and boiling point is higher attests to the hydrogen bonds which require energy to be broken. At 0 degrees C, water freezes, becoming a solid that is less dense than the liquid. Each molecule of water sets up 4 hydrogen bonds, and this requires slightly greater volume. Thus, the density of solid water, mass per volume, is less than that of liquid water. The ice, because of its lower density, floats, thus protecting the habitat beneath it during long, cold winters. Aquatic habitats are protected from freezing temperatures because water freezes and then floats on the surface. Solid water is less dense than liquid water. If solid water were more dense than liquid water, ice would sink upon freezing, more ice would sink upon freezing, etc., resulting in bodies of water that were nearly completely frozen, and the habitat would not be the same. So the next IB syllabus statement involving water is a significant component of blood, and blood transports substances throughout the body. With respect to their solubility, explain the modes of transport of glucose, amino acids, cholesterol, fats, oxygen, and sodium chloride. Well, first, blood is a watery solution with the role of transporting substances. It's a good solvent, and it's fluid over a wide range of temperatures. Blood is a watery solution with the role of transporting substances. We can see blood cells here within a vessel. Most of this is plasma composed of water. Water is a good solvent, and it's fluid over a wide range of temperatures. Salts are ionic compounds. They dissolve well in blood plasma, which is mostly water. Glucose and amino acids are polar. They dissolve in blood plasma, which is mostly water. Oxygen is nonpolar, does not dissolve well in water. Thus, the role of hemoglobin as a protein within red blood cells that does transport oxygen from one location in the body to another. Fats, including cholesterol, are also nonpolar. These substances are transported within a protein coat that is soluble. It's known as a lipoprotein. Here's an IB syllabus statement that you should be able to address without further slides. Explain the relationship between the properties of water and water's roles in living organisms as a coolant in sweat, a medium for metabolic reactions, and a transport medium. Water's uses in living organisms includes water as a coolant due to the high heat of vaporization, water as a transport medium because it's a good solvent, it's cohesive, and it's fluid over a wide range of temperatures. Serving for metabolic reactions which occur in a solution, water is the solvent for many solutes that dissolve well in water, and its temperature stability due to the high specific heat. What characteristics of water make it a good habitat? Well, it's temperature stable due to the high heat of vaporization. Solid water is less dense than liquid water, so ice floats on the surface, protecting the habitat below during long cold winters. And it's a liquid over a wide range of temperatures, and it's transparent, allowing light to pass for aquatic habitats. And lastly, as we approach the end of this movie, you may have wondered why soap works so well with both polar water and nonpolar fats. For example, when we use soap to clean dinner dishes coated with fats in a bucket of water. Soaps are long molecules, and they're amphipathic. In other words, they have a hydrophilic end and a hydrophobic end. The polar end attracts water, while the nonpolar end interacts with nonpolar fats. Soap, in effect, links water to the fat. Soap is amphipathic, like phospholipids. In this diagram, can you see the soap molecule, the water, and the oil? The soap connects the water to the nonpolar fats. And that brings us to the end of IB Bio Small Molecules Part 2, on to Molecular Biology Part 1, which is an introduction to molecular bio.